need to understand you're a barometer. You are the tuning fork. You bring in this energy. You are the one that, through your curiosity to what resonates with you as an intention, you're bringing these energies into your field. You're bringing these energies into the space that you're operating in. And if you are in fear, they throw out the chum into the spiritual water, and these entities will find you. And they become problematic because of your lens, your perception, which normally runs at a lower state. And as our dear friend Tom would say, the large consciousness system is giving you something that is fear-based. Hi guys, this is San Qing, and this is your superior self.
San, I've been waiting forever to have this conversation with you. I know it's going to be powerful. I know it's going to be energetic. Thank you for taking the time.
Oh, well, thank you for inviting me. I've been looking forward to this for quite some time. And, you know, the buildup of anticipation, the excitement, the energy, the sharing we're having right now is a collective. And this is what takes place when you engage with the amplified effects of consciousness.
I love that. It seems like we're, you have had similar conversations with a lot of similar guests, and I'm very curious to hear more about your story and your subjective experiences. How did this all start for you, right? Like spirituality, being I guess, is it an ordained priest in the Taoist tradition?
Yes. Yeah.
And then like your spiritual experiences, it seems like you talk a lot about energy. Is that in the Taoist traditions? Is that something that is within the framework of that? Coming from a background of Christianity, Catholicism, we don't talk a lot about energy. I mean, we talk a little bit about the Holy Spirit, but not a whole lot about what you're talking about. So I really want to know more about how you grew up. I think it was in Australia, and like your experiences growing up as a boy, and then like when did you like really get into spirituality?
You have these moments of consciousness where you reflect on what brought you to the present moment, and I think most people will go over points in their life where they feel as though have got a greater sense of themselves and who they are from that particular experience. And so for me, as a young boy, sort of kind of having an effect of realizing that I had the ability to absorb and articulate things very quickly from an academic perspective through, the expression of the education system. So I was never looked at by my classmates or people that I knew as someone that was really part of the group. I seemed to sort of stand out because I had a deeper insight. And from that, it sort of generated this sort of awareness that I'm different, and I was drawing attention to myself. And their response to that sort of expressed itself through a level of bullying that I had to deal with as a young boy, which drew me to my desire to want to express myself in the physicality of being able to handle my position, being taunted with the bullying on a daily basis. So I basically was drawn to bodybuilding at a very young age of about 10. I picked up an education of a bodybuilder by Arnold Schwarzenegger. And it intrigued me, just the idea of being able to exercise and eat right and change and transform my body, which was necessary because I felt like there was something superhuman that I needed to express. So it was looking at things like, TV shows, the idea that, you could create muscle and strength and sort of basically defeat the dragon, as our dear friend Tom would say. Wherever the LCS is offering you this information, that's where you go. So I kind of created this sort of need to embody the physicality. And so it drew me down a path of getting deep into bodybuilding, then powerlifting. And, you know, by the time I was 15 or 16, I had already developed a very muscular physique. And at a certain point later in my teenage years, I realized that, you know, Arnold Schwarzenegger was not everything that I thought he was. It was kind of deflated a little bit because I had used the intention of, if you eat right, you exercise right, you create this physical expression, this muscularity. In my case, it would have been like He-Man. And so it was completely founded on my belief system, and I was able to achieve incredible results within a gym environment. And most people would look at me and go, so what is it that you're doing? I'm like, I'm eating broccoli and fish and chicken. And they're like, no, what are you doing? And I'm like, I'm not doing anything other than focusing on training. And they couldn't believe that someone had the ability to take their mind and mold it. And I was getting phenomenal results, strength-wise, ridiculous numbers. And then at a certain point, I felt like I needed more. There was a voice going in my head where you need to find something inside you. And I'm like, well, what does that even mean? And then I was given an idea in my mind that I needed to go and experience, in those days, a meditative state, meditation. Now, back in those days, we were exposed to things like Hare Krishnas, yogis, people that were sort of a little bit different. It didn't make a lot of sense to me, but these were people that had sort of like sacrificed their path within the material world, and they wanted to express themselves as an embodiment of this spirit, this Buddha. It didn't make any sense at all. And I couldn't make sense of stilling the mind. So I went looking, and intuitively you start to look at these things and go, well, how do I find that? And I found an actual person that was giving meditation classes that were free, was in a local rec center. They said they were basically a master, a grand master at this form of energy. And, you know, come and take a class and become still. And I was like, I don't think I know what that is, but something is telling me I need to go there. So I went to this class, and, you know, it's in a rec center in some ghetto, and I'm not expecting much because my mentality was take something, crush it, toss it. I was very much into the physical, and I knew that protected me. I grew into this persona because it was necessary from my childhood being bullied. And this was sort of this really, looking back at it, every year it becomes more and more apparent to me, working with my teachers like Blatsu that I channel, that this is the very reason how I sort of projected myself into where I am today. So I went into this class, and I'm not expecting much because I don't think of much. It's like I crush things, I destroy things, I lift things. And this is sort of not for me. It's for Hare Krishnas. It's for Buddhists. It's for someone that does a yoga class. I don't know what this is. Anyway, so I sat down, and I was sort of an overgrown ape. My back was hurting. I was trying to get into the lotus position, and noise is going on outside. It's like, it's mayhem, really. It's in a really bad neighborhood. I'm not expecting much. I look around the room. There's half a dozen misfits that are looking for a freebie, just like me. I don't know any better. I'm assuming this person is trying to write off their 501 or something like that as some potential. I'm helping the community. And so I sit there, and all this noise is going on, and she's this little petite, like Asian woman. She goes, now I want you to listen to my voice and then let everything fall away. And I literally sat there, and the second she said that, she started doing this. And everything went silent. And I was like, oh my God, I have never experienced this level of awareness in my life. The second she said that, everything became silent. Nothing. I couldn't hear the cars, the ambulances, the barking dogs, the screaming, or even her spoken word. And I was just floored. And I knew right there that this was my next level. This is where I need to go. I need to go to this stillness and discover whatever it is that comes with it. Now, that brings me back to when I was a young boy. I was looking for a martial form. I studied a few martial arts over the years. And this one person within my class was a girl had a father who was a martial artist, and he was teaching it. And I heard that he had trained with Bruce Lee. And I was like, oh, wow, I've got to check this guy out. So I went with her after school to their house. And the father's like, sure, I'll teach you. And I'm like, yeah, I gotta hurt some people. You know, there's bullies. And he's like, sit down, pen and paper. And I'm like, pen and paper? What are you talking about? Sit down, pen and paper. And I'm like, no. I don't think you understand. I want to hurt people. And he's like, no. Sit down, pen and paper. And you need to write this down. I'm like, I don't know what, I need to express myself. I want you to teach me how to fight. He's like, you want to fight? Okay, stand up. I'm like, okay. Now hit me. I'm like, listen, old man, I'm going to hurt you. I don't want to, you know, he's this little Asian guy, but his hands were like mitts. They were literally double the size of a baseball mitt. And I'm like, it seemed a little odd. And he's like, I want you to hit me. I'm like, no. If I kick you, I'm gonna really hurt you. And he's like, I want you to hit me, kick me. Anyway, I wound up and I kicked him in the leg, and I thought I broke my leg. And I'm like, holy moly. I think I've broken my leg. I'm screaming. And he's like, you're not ready. Sit down and start writing. So I went through this. This is literally like corny Hollywood movie. Take the master, sit and be silent, listen to his stuff. I did it for about 2 weeks, and I realized I'm just not ready for this. I can't do this. This is not me. So then I go back to this meditation moment, and I realize this is where the secret source is coming from. I'd never had access to this. This is like almost like being able to stop time, and I needed to do this, this, and this, and it will just literally transform. When she said everything will fall away, she wasn't kidding. And of course, I immediately immersed myself in, you know, training energy, and started training energy. Then I started getting on the path of a Taoist. And, you know, some of the first things I was getting involved with on the road to being a priest was, you know, training channeling. And this is when everything, the roof blew off. So I got into this class, and I channeled Lao-Tzu the first time. And my teacher had been in the game 60 years and looked at me and went, he literally had a breakdown. It was like, how in Tao's name did you do that? And like, so when you channel direct source, it's like a laser beam comes down through your whole body. It electrifies you, and you emit this heat and energy that is not from this world. And so everyone in the class was like, they had little sticks with marshmallows standing around, you know, cooking their marshmallows. There was that much transmission. Now, I'm still to this day transmitting and communicating with Lao-Tzu at a very high frequency with all my teachers. I have over 171 of them. And when people understand that this is another expression of consciousness, you can tap into it. Some people might call it Akashic records. They might call it the source, God, universe. But you will get information that you, as you, in your own words, bring back to this 3D reality. And then you can verify it from self-evident based stuff, where it may be information, it may be an energy transfer, it may be a physical healing, but you're able to use this to alter this 3D reality, which is really the part that levels people up for their consciousness. It's like, I can't believe you just did that. I can't believe that just happened. Physical healing. Well, that took me to physical healing. That was the next thing that I started on, which was distance healing, not soon after that. And I witnessed first go. First, it started off with, you may have heard this story before, or I'll tell you. It started off with, I just got done with distance healing training. Got home, got a friend. She called me. She said, hey, look, I can't make it. I want to see you, but I can't make it today. I can't make it this week. I sprained my ankle. It's the size of a watermelon. We're going to have to catch up. And I said, oh, look, that's too bad. We'll catch up next week. And just before she got off the phone, I was like, whoa, hang on, hang on. Let me try this thing that I just started to learn today. And she's like, okay, what? Well, look, just bear with me. Just hear me out. I'm just going to follow this instruction and just let's see what happens. Okay. And basically what was going on was this distance healing in concept for most people, they think of the entanglement within a quantum model of understanding how things can instantly affect something from a distance, a million miles away. Through the energy, you're able to access this state. Well, I was given an instruction. I went through the processes. There's a ritual within Taoism. I basically read it off and I said, look, I'm going to read this off of my mind. And at the end, I'm going to speak this, what they call incantation. And then you tell me what happens. So she's sitting on the other end of the phone. I read this off. And then at the end, I say the incantation, which was heal, 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 heal. And then the next thing that came out of her mouth was an expletive. What the? And I was like, whoa, 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 what? And she was like, what the? What kind of sorcery? And that was her word, sorcery. And I was like, whoa, hang on a second. All I did was read a script off. My ankle shrunk before my eyes, and I'm standing on it right now. And I was like, you're full of shit. And she's like, I'm not kidding you. This happened to me. And like that awakening you and I are having right now, and the audience will experience it, is a state of consciousness. Now, the freaky part was she freaked out. And I was like, I'm a skeptic. I don't believe you. So I drove over to her house, and she's standing there. She runs to me at the door. She's at her mother's home. Her mother's sitting at, this is sort of like, it's kind of like surreal, but corny. And her mother's sitting there in her like lounge chair, sort of very overweight. Her idea of well-being is a pack of cigarettes and a bottle of vodka on a daily. That's how she takes care of herself. But she was a very affluent person, a lot of money. The daughter runs to me and she gives me a big hug. And I'm like, what's going on? This sounds surreal. And so there was Polaroids back in those days. You ever heard of those?
Yeah.
So 2 photos, one before and after. I was just like, you're out of your, it's just unreal. And the mother's like puffing away. And I'm sort of like, I'm very skeptical. I'm like, what exactly are you getting out of like playing these games with me? And when I saw the photos, I was like, holy crap. This doesn't make any sense to me. And so she's puffing away. The mother's like puffing away. I'm like, okay. Literally. She's like, I always knew you were a healer. And I was like, what does that even mean? And like, she's like this like prophet. And so the really weird sort of like family dynamic where, you know, they go looking for alternative ways. She didn't believe in doctors. And I'm like, okay, this is so weird to me. I don't even know what to make of it. She goes, I've got a problem with my foot. I wish you to come and see me and give me a healing. I'm like, give you a what? I don't even know what the hell you're talking about. A what of what? And she's like, come back in a couple of days and I want you to give me a healing. And I'm like, I don't know. Lao-Tzu is now talking in my mind. So I've got this other dialogue going on where I've had this experience with Lao-Tzu. I'm having all these emotions that are coming over me. And quite frankly, I had what was equivalent to a dark night of the soul from that Lao-Tzu experience, where I had every thought, every feeling, every emotion come over me for 5 days straight, where halfway through, probably the second or third day, I really wanted to just call it quits and just stop the misery. Now, when I finally got hold of my teacher, he was like, oh, this is amazing. This is incredible. I'm like, I don't know what you call incredible, but like I'm having moments where I need to distract myself because I've never experienced the magnitude of what I'm going through. It's like a car wash of every thought, every feeling, every emotion. I would go to the movies to distract myself. And I literally had this moment where this woman was walking out on the screen and she was naked. And I physically threw up on the guy sitting in front of me. And this is the sort of like magnitude of what happens when you are altering the internal alchemy processes and you're activating your energy centers. And when you get a huge dose of that, all the emotions will rise to the surface, and people will seem, or they will experience and believe that they're having, you know, psychotic episodes, emotional like unravelings that are at an epic level that just puts, you know, to bed what some people might categorize as certain states of your psyche. And so all this stuff takes place, and then I get to this healing thing, and I'm kind of like I'm right there. I don't know what to make of all this. And so then I get to the woman's house a couple of days later after everything calmed down, and I'm now having a dialogue with this energy, Latsu, in my mind, and I'm hearing his voice. And my other channel teacher was like, "This is incredible. This is amazing." And you get an access and a sense of knowing where you have a clairvoyance turn on, where everything turns into a computer screen of icons. So I can see, and to this day, it only gets stronger. I teach people how to do it. You can see every emotion, every thought, every feeling, and the auric field of that person, and it presents itself through the energies and how they pulsate. So within Taoism, we look at things from a perspective of, I'll look at you, and it will present an auric field. And within that, each energy center has an emotion and a virtue. You want to balance the virtue out over the emotion. So most people have excessive emotions that are problematic in of itself, because this is where you get what we call, my dear friend, the Buddhist monk, distortion, dukkha, what they call dukkha. And so when you balance those energies out, you create synchronicity within the body and harmony. And so we always look at the first 9 energy centers. First is the earth, then what someone would call the 7 that people consider chakras. And then we look at the 5 vital organs, which is the heart, the liver, the lungs, the kidneys, and the spleen. And from that, it just presents everything physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually about the individual. And of course, then you're able to look at what goes on within their auric field, and it sort of can shape shift depending upon where they're at, and things will change. But generally speaking, when I give someone an auric, what I call a psychic reading, most people tend to, because I'm out here in Nevada, I'm in Las Vegas, I have my kids, I've all taught them how to do sort of like things like hypnosis, remote viewing, all that kind of stuff. Because they're kids, they absorb this stuff like so quick. And so we like to go down and have family day. What's family day for us? We'll go down on the strip and play street magic. It's like, hey, we'll go up to someone and go, hey, would you like to feel bliss and ecstasy right now? And they're like, of course we would. That'd be exciting. And of course, you know, you offer psychic readings, and they're like, sure, give me a psychic reading. And, you know, it's always an apprehension, but then it's a dismissal. Don't worry. Yeah, whatever. Give me a psychic reading. Well, I always start at the bottom, because most people have what some people will call buyer's remorse. Because when I start at the bottom, it's a clear, like, transparent look. I read off the menu. I don't get involved with whether someone's going to tell me I'm the Messiah, the next coming of Jesus. All I'm doing is reading the information, and that becomes problematic for a lot of people. By the time I get to what they call the second energy center, the second chakra, which within Taoism would be the third energy center, it's the sexual energy. And then they're like, whoa, 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 we're good. And they're like, this is real. I'm like, yes, it's very real, but I'm not attached to it. And that makes it really easy to access, because it's the present moment. It's not the future. It's not last week. I'm not worrying about my ego being validated by that person telling me I'm amazing. I can read all this information. It's right there in front of you. And so you get these sort of states where, as you develop these skills, just like channeling, which is the highest within Taoism, is the highest state of consciousness. If you can channel direct source, it trumps all the other rituals, energetic practices. And quite frankly, the internal alchemy is critical. By developing the inner alchemy, you're able to separate electric from magnetic. and do some more crazier things that most people consider superhuman, like physical healing, manifestation, magic. Magic in of itself is nothing more than a very detailed, architectured manifestation, but it like very precise. And so that comes with moving the energies around you, inside you, outside of you, aligning things within the universe, because Taoism is fundamentally the structure of the individual's relationship with the universe, and understanding the mother of all things, the Tao, is this present moment. And so when you're able to access that, crazy things take place. And that, I mean, that goes right back to the history of Taoism that started with the Yellow Emperor's relationship with the universe and his whispers from the universe that gave him the basic infrastructure of Chinese culture today, leading right down to the current version of Mandarin, all the way back to pictographs and oracle bone reading, which has been documented within a timeline of 6000 BC, but it goes way beyond that. Like when I go into deep training with my teachers, they give me a lot more information that becomes very valid and evidence-based, because people will feel the visceral effects of me speaking the words from the scripture. And so that relationship started. In essence, fast forwarding to that, that was the first time I witnessed a physical healing, where I got to this woman's house and she doesn't believe in doctors. She smokes cigarettes, drinks alcohol, has more money than God, but doesn't want to deal with doctors. Always had some weird massage therapist, someone around her. And so she couldn't see her feet. She couldn't really see her body. And so she's on the chair that she was on the last time I saw her. She's sitting there and she said, "Take a look at my foot. I've had these pains." And I'm like, okay. So I get down, like, this is all news to me. I'm just going to take a look. I take her sock off and I almost die. I look at her foot and it's gangrenous. It's like it should be amputated. In my mind, I literally went, I need to take this person to a hospital right now. And she's just sitting there puffing away like it's that big deal. She can't see her feet. I don't think she ever has. I think a lot of people, everyone around her has been placating her and pandering to her because she pays them to. And so I'm sitting there freaking out. She's like, "Well, what do you see down there?" And now I have a dialogue with Latsu in my mind. And he's like, "We're going to heal this." And I'm like, "I'm going to heal what? What are you talking about?" And this is the dialogue I'm having. And she's like, "So what's going on?" And I'm thinking, we need to take this woman to the hospital. It's just, that's it. I mean, that's the end of it. And he goes, "No, you're going to watch this." I'm like, interesting. I mean, how much better can it get? Now, I meet you a couple of days ago. I have literally what they'd call a continual breakdown of all things that I know to be reality from a mental, emotional, physical state. And now I'm in deep with this idea that I'm going to witness a healing that I didn't even know what a healing was a week ago. And literally, I watched this gangrenous flesh go from gangrenous back to pink in color within 40 minutes. Yeah.
Wow.
I'm like, hang on a second. And it's so funny because I told this story to one of my podcast guests, and she goes deep on people. So she likes reading the energy. And she's like, "You're for real?" And I'm like, "Yes, I'm for real." 100% for real. And she was just like, You're not making this up." I'm like, "No, I'm not making this up. I've been experiencing this for 30 years. And so this entrees into my deep dive into Taoism or being ordained as a priest. And basically, I mean, I could go on for hours for this, but I want to answer more questions. But in essence, this is what I'm used to. And of course, what happened from there was I got really kind of excited and started doing things like looking for people with sebaceous cysts, and I'd raise it to the surface of the skin, supercharge it with energy. It would rise up, it would pop, release the pus, and then seal back up again. And that was a hobby of mine for a while there. And you get excited, you kind of tune into it. But the most dramatic effect of that was when this woman had this really a massive melon on her breast. She was breastfeeding, one of her ducts got blocked, and it was huge. and it was blistery, kind of red, irritated. And her and I witnessed this, where it raised up, it opened up, a liter of pus poured out of her chest, and then it sealed back up in front of us. Wow. And people were like, and trust me, when I saw it, that's my expression. I witnessed this, and it's like, it's so, for a lot of people, like for yourself, because you haven't experienced these things, you enter with a level of contraction, a level of, that doesn't even seem possible. Well, you know, I shared this, I think I shared this with Tom, and he's like, yeah, you know, absolutely. This is just your probability of intention going down. Now, over the years, this is what I see on a daily basis. And, you know, Tom and I had this conversation when we went deeper into, I get a lot of people that come to me that are like, you're that guy that I was given the phone number of. My grandmother's in a coma. They're telling me she's going to die tomorrow. And I'm like, no, that's not going to happen. And next day, grandma wakes up, vitals, out of a coma. The doctor goes, my mind is blown. I don't get it. It's a level of intention. And even Tom, to his own admission, was like, oh, you have done that many times before. I'm like, right on, high five, brother. Because this is literally, I mean, for you, Trey, being on this journey, this seeker, and you're so embodied in it, and it's so much right here. And I see that. You are looking for these type of levels of consciousness because this is part of the validation for yourself. I'm an evidence-based guy. For me, I come from a time when the 80s is my favorite decade. So my thing is, I'll take the Pepsi challenge with anyone on this one. You have to be able to bring it. You have to be able to show people. And because that's how you shift the consciousness. And Tom and I had that conversation. It was like, this is how you change. And what happens is that person experiences it, then they go and tell 10 other people, and they tell 10 other people. Then it comes back around and you amplify it. And from a neurological perspective, you can start to replicate it because of the mirror neurons within your own physiology. It's like, if the old expression, if he can do it, I can do it. It's the 4-minute mile, right? Mm-hmm. So more and more people become in tune with that. When they experience it, it becomes validated for them. Then they're able to go out and do it. And, you know, I have a lot of people that will go and do, I actually developed an app specifically for that. I don't know whether you knew that, but the app puts you into a gamma brainwave. So you instantly feel like you've had 5 pina coladas and full body massage and 10 days in the Bahamas. And this happens regardless of your belief system, whether you're the janitor at McDonald's or you're the next reincarnation of the Dalai Lama. You will feel this because it's a physiological thing that's attuning you to a higher state. So it starts with a visual audible experience. And that visceral kinesthetic response is where you validate it for yourself. And so the side effects of that is literally, oh, I healed myself. I healed my dog. I healed my neighbors. I don't know. I just feel so in tune with myself. And how I measure it, I measure brain waves when people go through these experiences. And it always ends up at a high gamma brainwave, which is a complete consciousness and envelopment of the brain, meaning you can access alpha, delta, theta, epsilon at the same time. You're basically the puppet master of all things from a consciousness perspective. You're not having this separation of conscious and unconscious. So you go to this journey. I get to this point. I've been sort of in the game, the OG game, for 30 years. I teach people either basically under the blanket of a Taoist priest. I teach people clairvoyance, mediumship, channeling, physical healing, you name it. It's within the ancient practices of Taoists to basically hand this stuff down from generation to generation. And over the thousands of years, very few people have ever had insight into the alchemy because it's very fragmented. You get bits and pieces, you get an offering here or there, but not things that are solidified and palpable, where you can go, I use this practice and it bared fruit. It gave me a result. Whereas within the Taoist practices, internal alchemy, we will build and integrate your architecture, your Nidan, your internal alchemy practices, your Neigong, your internal power, and you will fortify this as if it's as palpable as your physical body within your physical tissue. So these energetic centers are very palpable. They've been validated from many other practices worldwide and over the thousands of years in everything from, you know, Judaism all the way through to Hindu, Buddha, Christianity, Catholicism. There is a deep magical component of mysticism that when you look deeper, you'll find it. And we all have our own practices, but, you know, I think the closest one that would come to a Taoist practice would be a Rosicrucian sort of in deep dive into these types of practices. They're still not as refined as the Taoist internal alchemy, but you can access this stuff from a cultivational perspective because they use very similar processes where we have morning and evening activations. We go deep into making sure that what may seem like a practice that you create a state, you maintain that state, and that becomes your default. That becomes the operational consciousness, not a moment of, well, I took a pause, I got into a meditative state, I feel really relaxed, and then I have to go back to the real world. No, this becomes the very transmission of who you are on a second-by-second basis. And that is by making sure that you continue to attune yourself. And, you know, when I listen to, you know, and understand the Rosicrucian practices, they're very similar, but not as detailed. But we go through the layers of the physical body, the energetic body, the spiritual body, and then there's layer components to that. Now, what a lot of people tend to do is focus on the electromagnetic, which is a light spectrum that within this 3D reality can be very limited to a dualistic sort of perception. And once you get past that dualism, the idea that there is such a thing, you become a non-dual, non-centric sort of like all things. And so within Taoism, it's yin and yang. You go up the mountain and you hit that point of awareness, all is one, one is all. And this is what we call the Wu Ji, between the breath in and the breath out of yin and yang, is the center point, which a quantum physicist would call the 0 point, which would be called the superglue of the entanglement theory. And that is the Wu Ji. That's the stillness, which then you enter what we call the mother, which is the Tao, the mother of all things. And so then you start to really level up. And the more and more you become aware, the more and more that gap between conscious and unconscious. And for a Taoist, it's actually 3 phases. It's conscious, subconscious, and unconscious. We go through a cycle of things where you go for concept, consciousness, knowing, unconscious knowing, and then being one with all things. And so there's phases to this development. And you start to embody this, and, you know, the energetic component, just like how you're feeling more energetic, we're attuning, we're feeling energy at this moment, it starts to become more palpable. There's more heat in your body. There's clear evidence that you're experiencing an energetic experience that comes from the energy. I had a medical intuitive on, Patrice. He's I think he's from France. Interesting character. And, you know, he was like, holy moly, I've never experienced this before. Like, you're blowing my mind with the attunement, because normally he blows people out of the water with the energy. It's a resonance. That's all it is. So everything is energy. Energy has a vibration. The vibration has a frequency. The frequency, once you hit that resonance, you can obtain it. Oh, yes, it will be mine. You will hit that. Now, how long you hold that is self-evident. So holding that resonance will be determined by your own internal cultivation. And so being able to maintain it, being able to repeat it, which is what you're a seeker of. You want to experience it, then you want to repeat it. So it's not a psychotic delusion that, oh, I'm just making this stuff up in my head. I'm a skeptic. I have been from day one. And I want to see evidence of these things. I want to experience a visceral, energetic experience. Because without that, it just becomes problematic, and it more ends up being you're questioning what you're doing with your time, what you're doing with your life, where are you going with this. It's sort of like, so it seems like a lofty sort of idea or concept, and you don't really make anything out of it, which is where a lot of people are with the spiritual journey today. They get what we call a glimpse, they get a taste, and they chase the spiritual dragon. And until you have a method that can show your repeatable response, it becomes very problematic and quite dissatisfying. And you become defeatist. You become very disappointed by the outcome, because humans are into what they call a heteroaction, which is what you must start, you must finish. That's a cycle within the psyche, that you know that you're still in this duality. You're still moving within these parts, and you're identifying as the emotion. You're identifying as what's going on in front of you, instead of being the present moment. And it sounds so sort of like airy-fairy, sort of like, hey, we're present moment. But I know Trey, and I know his audience will understand what I'm speaking of. And when you're able to obtain that, crazy things happen. Like heat starts to rise. You feel that heat within your physical body like you are right now. It's like, oh, okay, well, I can't explain it, but there's something going on here. Maybe I should take a pause before I speak too much.
On a roll. Let him go. Let him do his thing. You make this interview very easy for me. Just listening to you talk, I think it's fascinating, because you're hitting on a lot of the topics that I'm very interested in, because yes, I want to obtain that certain level of consciousness that has repeatable effects in my life, where I can tap into that higher levels of consciousness and receive information and then integrate it back here in this reality, so that I can be the conscious creator that I know that we all can be. But I'm really, really curious now, but like, it sounds like you experience reality totally different than the average Joe. Like how do you experience reality? How do you see it? And not so, how do you see it with your physical eyes, right? Like, so when you're seeing energy, when you're talking about the auric field, is that through the third eye? Is that through the physical eyes? Like, how do you see different dimensions? I mean, that's a loaded question, but I'm getting you primed up, right, to give me a fantastic answer. I want to know exactly how you see reality through your physical eyes.
Yeah, how I see it through my physical eyes is there's information and energy everywhere, spirits, entities. I see it all. And, you know, it's just with my eyes open. Now, this is a level of development that comes from, you know, cultivating. This is where the method is so important. So this is why when you lean on ancient practices, and I had this conversation earlier with a podcast guest of my own today, and you know, he acknowledges, and I acknowledge, this new world spirituality awareness that takes place, where I just had an epiphany. I feel energy. You know, and let me be very clear. 30 years ago, when someone would come to me and they're diagnosed with what they consider a psychotic episode, it goes to the next level, because I was able to help them identify with what was going on. It wasn't a psychotic episode. You were having an awakening, a breaking, more commonly we call it, where you're revealing a new state of awareness from a consciousness lens. And with that, you gain more access, but things become more palpable. There's a degree of difference that takes place in your thoughts, feelings, and emotions. They start to present themselves in a much denser energetic profile. And so when you start to do that, like 30 years ago, it was, hey, I'm afraid I'm going to be committed. What is going on here? Now, today, when someone has a very similar effect, where they're having what someone would call a breaking, an awakening, however you want to perceive it, people are like, oh my goodness, I'm channeling the Palladians. Next minute, they're on YouTube, you know, entertaining an audience, talking to how they've experienced this thing. They see the light, they do all these things. Now, what I found with a lot of channelers, and I'm old school, right? So I've had an old school character on my podcast. I haven't released it yet, David Verdesi. Now, David Verdesi is an interesting cat, because he's had a journey very similar to mine. He traveled the world looking for masters of all types of internal alchemy practices. and he came across a guy that I had experiences with. I actually worked with I worked for the same family at one point, a very affluent Asian family that ran Indonesia, and they were very much into internal alchemy. There's a thing called Magnus of Java, a book where it shows you the journey of John Chang, who was one of the very few people, even to this day, to be able to transmit heat from their physical body and burn objects from a pyrokinesis, telekinesis level. Now, these are all developmental skills. I've never got all warm and fuzzy to have to go to transmit heat. I can transmit energy to witness and observe physical healings. That gets me all warm and fuzzy. I don't get all excited. I've come across many peers and masters in my journey over the last 30 years that have had what they call, true Kundalini experiences. Now, I'm not dismissing other people's Kundalini experiences, but there's a fundamental alchemical processes, just like the Taoist Neigong practices, where you shift the physical matter and you open space for this energetic architecture, and you can call on it and alter things in this 3D reality that would seem superhuman, Harry Potter-like, doing things like enveloping your I haven't done it lately, envelop my forearm in anesthesia, drive a fork through a skewer through it, pull it out, and you won't see an entry or exit point. And I'll sit here, have a smile on my face, and it's another day in the park. This is a state of consciousness. This is part of Qigong training, where you pack the Qi. You're mastering this physicality, right? So a lot of people tend to dismiss this because of the New Age spiritual. I feel energy. I don't need to really go into a system. Whether it's Qigong or Reiki or however you enter into the energetics, you really, I always offer this as an option. You really should start to master the practice of moving energy, because once you experience it, it can be problematic if you're not really familiar with how you're going to move it through your physical body, how you're going to transmit it to other people. And if you're operating in a duality, which most people are when they're in the field of light worker, massage therapists, acupuncturists, these are most of my students, doctors, psychologists, psychiatrists, physicists. These are the type of people that come to me for the training. This is problematic because you're operating from a duality. So what does that mean? From our dear friend Tom Campbell, fear will find you. So if you are in this dualistic perception, emotions will still control your reality, and you will be distracted by them, and they will control and conduct and alter what you're perceiving and how you're experiencing it. So it's always good to move that off the table the first thing. So when you're doing that and you're playing with energy, energy doesn't leave you, right? Energy is present. In a few minutes, we'll go and we'll do a little samples if you're interested, and you can experience the energy firsthand, the vortices in your space, other things. It's there. You don't have to close your eyes. You don't have to call in the Palladians. You don't need 3 incense or a lotus position. I'm not dismissing these things because they're part of the ritual. But once you obtain this level of consciousness, your training becomes more concentrated and it amplifies. This is nothing like the physical processes that most people get into, where they start with exercise and they work out, they get some muscles, they lose some body fat, and they feel like they're in good shape. And if they take their hand off the pulse of that exercise, they lose all the physical traits and the development from a cardiovascular perspective, from a muscular perspective. They lose that within days. Energetics is not like that. Energy, once you put yourself in the game of that and you start cultivating, it will continue to pay you forward. You will develop more skills. So you can put a pause on it and you can come back and you'll find that your level of attention, intention, and your cultivation goes up several notches. It doesn't go down. It never will go down. So anyway, Verdesi and I had experienced many things. So John Chang worked for the same family I did in relation to the healings. And so they just basically had me as their healing guru, and he worked for them too. And there's something written in one of this book, Magnus of Java, where there's a guy, and the guy happened to be my employer, and he told me the story. He goes, "You're just like John." And I'm like, "What do you mean I'm just like John? You do healings just like John." And I was like, I didn't put two and two together. Once I did, I was able to get access to him. Since then, he's passed away, but he is trained, and he trained Verdesi for many years. And that internal alchemy, you start to separate the electric from magnetic, and you can start doing some crazy things. But in a nutshell, the scene that I'm talking about was he gave me his name is Father Damati is his last name. And he said, John was holding this banana, and he said, it was on the other side of the room. He goes, "Hold it, and I'm going to cut it in half." And he took his fingers, and within Taoism, we have this thing called sword figures, which is a hand seal that you use when you're using energy. And he did this. He slashed it across the banana from the other side of the room. And I laughed, and I went, "Ha ha, guess what? You didn't cut it." And this is the father's explaining the situation. And he goes, "Peel the banana back." And he goes, peels it back, and it slides right off and falls to the ground. Now, this is documented in that book. I got to hear it firsthand. I got to experience many different cultivational practices, but it comes back down to, I want to use this word, realm of man. I'm going to use it. Honor it, respect it, value the processes that come with your own cultivation, and you will obtain what it is you're looking for, Trey. And so when you find the system that you gravitate to, that you get that charge, just like the one you get now, it's that moment. And people like, you'll be like, "Well, how do you know that?" I see it, and then I feel it. So there's degrees of sensory perception that you acquire through your journey. And so it's not a mystical thing where people have to just be so far removed. And if you're not doing it right, and you didn't hop 3 times on your foot under the first moon of the secret stars of Jupiter, then you're not going to acquire these skills. I don't want to dismiss rituals. Rituals are important, but understand that I've come across masters in my lifetime that only 2 that have ever had Kundalini experiences. And so people reference that. I had a Kundalini awakening, and I believe they've had an energetic awakening, but not a Kundalini. Because what happens when you do that, you spend the time to master the energies, and they're palpable. And those 2 particular people that I'm aware of, that I've experienced and witnessed, can levitate, can stop their heart, can do a bunch of things that come with, I would say, a graduation of consciousness from these cultivational practices. Never wanted to levitate, haven't focused on it. Do I know it's possible? Yes, I've witnessed it. Have I done it myself? I guess no. And I'm not really interested in doing levitation. Now, energy-wise, and being able to instantly access it and show someone a physical healing, or a manifestation, a degree of magic, which we call magic, which is a really intricate sort of like manifestation that has many moving parts that will acquire a result. Yes, I'm very excited about that. That's part of the Taoist ritual. But, you know, there are some things that are evidence-based, and this brings me back to when people just go, I felt energy, I channeled my Palladians, I'm doing all this stuff. This is great, but I've been in the game a long time, and what happens is you get there, and if you don't have a good method, you will burn out. You will use your physical energy. You'll find this from light workers, massage therapists, healers. They all have the same problem. It becomes problematic because that instantly is something you can identify as an evidence-based that you're using your own life force, which is the first thing we don't do within Taoism. What happens is you come in with what we call Jing, which is your constitution, as when you were born into this world, and it's your gene expression, your genetic expression, your hereditary response to your ancient sort of ancestors. It's all fed to you within your programming. And so most people will come in at about 80% of their battery. So I get them to look at their life force as a battery pack. And so when you're born into the world, you probably come in, most people come in about 80%. I've never really seen anything, below 70, but people do get born with, one hand tied behind their back. But the beautiful part within a Taoist practice is we can cultivate that energy and bring that battery up to 100%, from 100% to 1,000%, from 1,000% to 10,000%. This is about honoring. There's a really deep degree of what we call immortality that comes with the Taoist practices that is fundamentally very different to most other sort of indigenous rituals, where we will saturate the physical body, we will nurture the cells, and we will become the maestro. And so that's when you start being able to move the energy and sort of contradict a lot of things that would be sort of problematic from a neuroscientist perspective. If you have a neurologist, they'll tell you that you can't feel your third eye because that's sympathetically innervated, and it's not. You can't feel, there's no nerve, you can't feel that. And I can get people to feel their third eye and their energy centers very quickly because it's tuning in and adapting this energetic infrastructure that everyone has. You just need a roadmap. You need to have a clear processes to develop these skills. And so neurology and neuroscience in of itself right now is at an intersection, a crossroads, when they come across what they would consider someone from a metaphysical, mystical sort of mystic path like Taoism, which I don't think is in any way anything short than evidence-based. And so, you know, yes, I don't have a scientist measuring the zeros and ones to give me the end result, but I can show them, and that's as good as it gets in my book. And this is where I think spirituality is really coming to right now today. The new generation of spiritual seekers are not interested in people rambling on about science. They want to experience it. They're experiences. They want the experiential now moment, the fact of the self-evident stuff that they can validate, not someone going, I have a theory, and, you know, that theory may take a bit of time, and, you know, think about it, get in your head. And that's why people gravitate to our dear friend Tom so much, because he's an intuitive. He uses that as a superpower when he wants to, and that's a skill. Because most people, once they start with the thinking, that's the death nail. They get caught in the left side, and they're never able to open the gateways to the paranormal, to what seems impossible. So yes, I see auras, energy, information, spirits, entities, you name it. It's very normal. It's another day in the office for me, and I see it with my eyes open. Now, it's a skill set that you develop like anything else. There's a roadmap for that. I teach people these types of training, and you are not immune. If you're if you are a human being that have 5 senses, you will be able to learn and cultivate these types of systems. That's the thing that blows people's minds. It's like, hang on a second. Well, I will say, disclaimer, I've never used it on aliens, so I don't know. I don't know whether it's possible. I do see them a lot. This is a fire sale. Like,
do you really?
Yeah, oh yeah. 30 years ago, I would have come across an alien sporadically determined by the individual's tuning fork. So what happens is you open up.
Do you see the alien as like somebody walking down the street, like as like maybe who is disguised as a human being? You know what I mean? Like, do you see them do you see their true identity, or do you actually see like aliens, like UFOs, UAPs in the skies?
I see the shape-shifting, moving in and out of your auric field aliens. Have I physically seen one with my own eyes? No. Have I seen it from an ethereal, energetic perspective? 100%. And it freaks people out because I'll be like, oh yeah, I see this, this, and this in your auric field. And they're like, how did you know that? That was my favorite alien, or I'm into Jesus Christ, or I'm Buddha's my man. But it's in your field. It's self-evident by all the things that you are admitting into this what we call the ether. So what you're thinking,
is it,
and I mean,
belief systems, like a belief system, like so some like a teaching that you resonate with, like, so would Lao Tzu be in your field?
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, a lot of people, actually, in the last week, I've had quite a few people go, "My goodness, I see the immortal Lao Tzu in morphing in and out of my physical body in my auric field." Well, he's present with me. We're like two peas in a pod. So in most cases, most of the information that comes from me is more likely than not coming from him. It's not really, I don't make claim that I know anything. I'm as dumb as rocks. The information just comes out of me. And that's where you get this sort of like weird situation. And that's where it brings me back to the old school channeling, because there's this new age channeling. Now, the old school channeling is quite simple. When we channel, and Videsi had the same thing, I can put a flame under my hand. I can hold it there for a couple of minutes, and I can remove it, and it's not going to have any effect on my physical tissue. Now, this is part of when you attune yourself to a higher state. You're bringing in this spirit or energy within your physical flesh, and the physical flesh is a representation of that resonance, and that will be self-evident. That's old school channeling. That's how some people would, who may potentially be skeptical about what it is you're transmitting, would use this old school technique to determine whether you were transmitting or not this channel. Now, he goes a step further, which I think is sort of problematic. He has what he calls his channeling knife, where he'll run it over the physical flesh. I'm like, David, that's a little extreme for me, but he's gone through all the ins and outs of Asia, right? You know, I've been to many parts of Asia, but like he spent many, many years training in these jungles of Indonesia and parts of like Asia where you don't even have a signal. You don't see a human being. You're just out there with these, you know, masters cultivating their energy. So you have this new age channeler that can be problematic. Now, I can see when someone is channeling, there's a degree that comes with it that is quite evident. And yes, there's subtleties depending upon their own energetic makeup, but generally speaking, most people, you will experience this transmission that is superhuman. So it will present itself in your physical body. So there are simple things like holding a flame over your physical tissue to measure these types of like degrees of immersing into this state, this resonance. And so is it the new age stuff? Well, you know, I can see there's a lot of people that are channeling, and then I feel like there's also some people that want it really badly, and they're hoping.
So define channeling, because what you're saying to me, the old school way, it seems like you're tapping into something totally. But through channeling, they're identifying with a certain type of, I don't know, extraterrestrial culture or systems or entities, like, you know, to your point, Pleiadians. To me, old school channeling is like the Seth stuff. That books. I don't, you know, I wasn't anything, you know, I wasn't into a lot of channelers as far as like teachings. Like Seth was a big one, but it was kind of hard for me to understand. Obviously, Abraham Hicks was a huge influence in my life as far as, you know, is a little softer, like law of attraction stuff. But what you're talking about sounds totally different than what I identify as channeling. So can you identify the two and what the differences are?
So the first time I engaged with Latsu, it's a huge charge of energy through your physical body, and what comes out of your mouth is not coming from your conscious mind, and you will have a direct communication with whatever that energy is. Now, I've been teaching people for, you know, 3 decades this channeling processes, and you know, most people are not that descriptive when it comes to being really aware of when they're getting this direct transmission. When I talk to a lot of channelers these days, I just know, and the information comes out, and I will channel with my eyes open. So whenever you see a session with me and Latsu where I'm just really drawing him in for the audience, my eyes will be open. And the thing that kind of my wife finds really interesting, and most people do, is the amount of heat that comes from the transmission. Like the heat you're experiencing, it's just this like hair dryer sort of like palpable energy that starts to fill up your physical body. Well, that will also present itself to the audience or anyone that's experiencing that transmission, and it will be evident by the physical response that you're having. You're like, holy moly, there's this energy that I am immersed in that is being transmitted through me, that I'm experiencing it. And if I put my hands up, it feels like I have my hands in front of a fire. Now, this type of channeling, Abraham Hicks, you had mentioned some other people like Bashar. You know, Abraham Hicks tends to channel the way I do, with her eyes open. Bashar closes his eyes. I think it's sort of, it's a reflection of the individual's tapping of information. And then there's this sort of like pausing. Now you will see this, and it's self-evident when you're watching someone, say you can't see their auric field or the energy, but you can feel it. You will notice whether they're playing with their intellect, and they're creating something from a story as opposed to just free flow. There's no pause. When you are accessing information, there's no pause. It just keeps coming. And you're like, whoa. I mean, honestly, I could sit here and it would not stop. Now, this seems to be from the ET stuff that we were just talking about before. I'm seeing more and more aliens in people's physical fields than ever before. Like I said, 30 years ago, mostly it was some type of low watt demonic frequency. In some cases, people are coming to me because one of the ancient rituals that I train in is exorcisms. And it's like, hang on a second, that's part of my monastery. One of the monastic rituals within one of my lineages is exorcisms. Now, people go, oh, well, that's a little too freaky for me. It's deep embedded into all sort of religious beliefs, but that also sits within a dualistic perception. And once you start resonating at a higher level, all that type of energy just falls away. Those entities don't find themselves in your field. They don't plague you with disruptive thought forms and sort of hijacking the narrative of how you perceive things. Now, 30 years ago, that was more common for me. House clearings, these types of things. Now, I'm just seeing a fire sale on like aliens. I don't even call them ETs. They're aliens. And they vary. Short, small, fat, large, blue, green, white, and they're presenting themselves in their field. Now I'm seeing some of these reptilians. Some people call them problematic because they're reptilian-like, or lion humans with lion heads and human bodies. And, people need to understand you're a barometer. You are the tuning fork. You bring in this energy. You are the one that, through your curiosity to what resonates with you as an intention, you're bringing these energies into your field. You're bringing these energies into the space that you're operating in. And if you are in fear, or you're fear-based, and in most cases a lot of people are, they throw out the chum into the spiritual water, and these entities will find you. And they become problematic because of your lens, your perception, which normally runs at a lower state. And as our dear friend Tom would say, the large consciousness system is giving you something that is fear-based. And so once you get over the hurdle of the emotional content, which is really, really easy for anybody to master and regulate, there's no exceptions to the rule. And, some people may say there's more trauma or less. But when you microdose it appropriately, accessing and dialing in and synchronizing your energy centers, you will ramp up. You won't have the more dramatic effect that I had many years ago, where it was like every thought, every feeling, every emotion nonstop for days on end, where I couldn't escape it. And with that, of course, the clear senses turned on. And so I always microdose people so their energy centers turn on, and they have a very pleasant entry into the next state of awareness without this overdose where they're feeling like, I just can't do this. Because with the resonance, when you start to dial it in, as you will probably notice yourself, as you resonate higher, when you walk into a space, when you interact with other people, there's two things that happen. Someone loves you or hates you. It's that simple. And you will notice that by the dialogue, by the way that people operate in your presence, because your resonance. And that is a reflection of a dualistic sort of perception. So as long as you're operating in something that would be perceived as good and bad, up and down, in and out, left and right, these are the sort of things that you're going to be presented on a more regular basis as you continue to raise higher. And you'll be, oh, wow. It's kind of like going down the path of sort of a psychological profile within a hypnotist, therapist, psychiatrist aspect using the RAC, reticular activative system. that people sort of refer to. It's like once you say red cars, all of a sudden you see 100 red cars. Now, we can attribute that to what people call as the synchronicities, the deja vu, the Groundhog Day. It's a resonance. And it's like you put it out there and the universe will give you back. It's like it doesn't have a moral compass. It will give you what you're looking for. It's waiting. It's waiting. And the more and more you immerse yourself in your belief system, and in your case, you know, God, Jesus, you are immersing into this high frequency. It's valuable to you. And that's the most important thing. I always remind people, your truth is the only truth you need to be concerned with. And authoritarians get a little displaced and weirded out. You can't empower someone with that sort of idea of their reality. 100% I can. And the more and more you understand, you become whole, you become embodied, and you become grounded and open to all things. And so that resonance will continue to get higher. So I see things with my eyes open, and it's not problematic. It's just part of the training, and anyone can train in it. They just have to embody it. A lot of people start things in this day and age. People are very impatient. You know, it's taken 30 seconds. It's not, that's too long. And I mean, I'm not asking people, and I'm always the first person to say, you can have the same level of consciousness that I have in the same second by listening and resonating with what I'm transmitting. There's no reason why you can't step out of this conversation and literally be right there. Now, I had this medical intuitive on my channel, and he was like, holy moly, I bring this to every podcast, and I'm normally the one doing all the healing, and I just got my roof blown off just being in your presence. Now, all I'm doing is resonating. I'm just staying there. I'm just trickling it in as a catalyst, a conduit. I'm not looking at, I need to heal this person. I need to draw in the energy. I got to call in the angels. I got to do. No, I'm just resonating at what I know. And it's a synchronized frequency that comes from a vibration, that comes from an energy. And I just sit there. And so it has a rippling effect in all realms instantaneously, right down to someone's DNA profile. It will alter it. And so, you know, you go through these paths, you develop these skills. And so referencing back to the channeling aspect, I think that there's just this different degree where there's more people are abandoning the need to vet and qualify what it is they're getting for information these days. So I got it. That's good. And I'm not in the business of fear mongering. I always tell people there's two things that happen. If someone comes at you with fear, or they come at you with an absolute truth to all things, it can be problematic, and I would about face and walk in the other direction. Now, that's my personality, but it's also understanding that there are a million ways up the mountain. There's no right or wrong way. You have to feel the resonance inside you. When someone tells you this is it, that immediately is my skeptical red flag. Because I'm sorry, you can experience all different types of awareness, and they can be instantaneous. Just as you're a seeker, just from our conversation right now, you are leveling up. There is an altering effect within your energetic field. Now, it presents itself for you in the heat. You're feeling the heat. You're like, oh, no, I'm getting a little clammy here. It's hot in here. And that is because this is a transmission of energy. You're experiencing that. But I'm also dosing it at a level that doesn't make you go, what the? Because it has to alter at the pace that you want to digest it at. Now, if you get the roof blown off.
I like those experiences though, right? Because I feel like those are like upgrades. I feel like the more that I put myself in those situations, the more I expand. Right? Does that make sense? Because the people that I've talked to, people that have not come on the podcast who are spiritual teachers or people in the know of their own truth, but they resonate at very high levels of consciousness. They have left an imprint on me. They have taken me up to their level, and I've experienced that, and I have physiological reactions to that. But I like that because I know that that's proof for me. That's experience. That's experiential evidence that I'm experiencing something at a different level. And like, I like it because I feel like I'm expanding. I feel like I'm getting some type of upgrade biologically. I feel like my cells are totally different. I'm able to obtain different levels of consciousness in my own meditations, have my own experiences. And I don't know. I just, to your point of feeling, heat. Yes, I do feel heat right now. But I've had experiences where I felt totally like my entire body was like very electric filled, if that makes sense. Like it just like fiery. And so it's like, there's something to this. And we want to label it either good or bad. Like someone asked me, they were like, do you think that's like, was it benevolent? I was like, I don't know if it's benevolent or not. I don't know if it felt electric. I didn't think it was bad. I felt like I wanted more because I feel like the more that I put myself in that environment, the more that my consciousness expands. Right. And so again, the only reason why we want to label it is because that's what grounds us or anchors us in our conditioned belief systems. Like, but what is really good or bad? Like it's through the lens and what you perceive. And I absolutely love, what you hit on about someone's own truth, their own subjective experience, their own truths in this reality, because you're absolutely right. The problem is that we all get together because of our conditioning, because of our evolution, and we agree on things. We agree on terms on how we're going to live in society. And this is right and this is wrong. This is how you live. And anything outside of that, we're going to ostracize you, and which scares us. And it makes us conform because we don't want to go outside of status quo, because that could lead to loss of life or loss of relationships or friendships or companionship. And it keeps us in that box. So essentially we're locked, right? But when you can step into yourself, figure out, who you are. And there's a guy from Australia who recently just passed, Michael J. Rhodes. He's a spiritual teacher. He taught me by reading his books and a couple of conversations about how you need to develop like unconditional trust in self. Like to your point again, like there's going to be so many different teachers out there, but it's what you resonate with, like energetically in the body, like that you kind of go along with, right? Like you take what you can from them and you apply it to your own spiritual journey, not saying that their way is the way, right? Like that. I think that's what's so great about my take on it. Like all the different religions, I look at it as there's a thread that runs in all of them. They're all related somehow. And you take what you want from them, use it as a tool in your own consciousness development. And then you go home and you go do the work, right? Like to your point, there's always a different path up the mountain. It's just a lot of people don't take that first step, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's very, very true. It's kind of like right now. So you're an evidence-based guy. Do you have any type of objects like an apple, piece of fruit on your desk there? Or
I have a lot, dude. I have a lot of objects on this desk. I don't have any fruit, but I have like books, keys, paper. This. It's like a little like say Archangel Michael little token thing. Got this right here.
oh, look, is that Yogananda?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what's funny is the first page while you're talking about these miracles, right? Like the first quote is from John: "Except ye see signs and wonders, ye will not believe."
Right.
But yeah, Yogananda.
So you always start with an entry level of energetics with the tactile physicality, right? So for you, because your channel is even more sensitive now than it was when we first started this conversation. If you take your hands like this, right? Okay. Now place them on the desk. Okay. With your palms up, place them on the desk. Now I'm just going to start filling a little bit of energy into those hands so they resemble something that has much more weight to it. And just by feeling, start to feel more. Now, if you take them off the desk, notice the difference.
Yeah, there's definitely a difference.
Now, that's just straight up energy tapping into a different source. It's a palpability. It's like a whole, whoa. And I'm just being very gentle because I'm a gentle guy. That's how I work. Now, if you take that book, take the book, and it's not really infused with any sort of like ancient sort of sigils or incantations. I can see the profile of that. It's a nice book. It may have a little bit of your intention imprinted into it, but it doesn't hold a very dense sort of like presence of a higher frequency, right? So now you got that book, okay? You're holding it. You feel it with your hands, okay? Just sort of show it to the camera. Okay, you feel it, right? Now put the book on the table. Now you can do this as an observer. I don't know that you have that much room, but if you move back a little bit from the desk, you don't have to go far back. Use your hands as the tuning fork. I'm going to transmute a different energy into that book and imprint it with a whole different coding. And then you tell me what you experience, because this will happen in the same time that I put it into the ether. In 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Now, why don't you explain to the audience what you experience in your hands before you pick the book up?
So I'm feeling like circles, like in the centers, just kind of like a whirlpool of energy almost.
Yeah. And if you do this, there's something between your hands. Go a little slower, and you can put your hands back further because there's a concentration. So if you put them back a little further, now just palpate them really slow, like this. Notice there's magnitude.
Yeah.
Right?
It feels like I'm squeezing something.
Yeah.
Almost.
Yeah. Now, you recall the tactile density of that book. Now, just slowly reach for the book and pick it up and tell me what you notice.
It felt, when I first grabbed it, it felt like kind of, I don't know, heat almost. I don't know.
Yeah. I want you to explain it. I know what's going on, but it's that part of your realization, part of your consciousness is you being able to articulate what's going on.
Yeah, it was like, obviously I still had the same feeling of moving energy, and then when I picked it up, it was kind of like warmth, you know. And I don't know what that is, but it definitely felt it felt warm to touch, warm to the touch.
Right. Now, if you put it down, right, use your hands. You can sit back a little bit because it gives you a better reference of the density of what we're talking about. Now, sort of move it slowly towards the book and notice what happens. Very slow, very slow, 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 because you're accumulating data every time you do that. And sort of now palpate your hands a little bit. Slower, slower. Because everything you're doing, you're accumulating this information. Now, to take it one step further, and then you can describe what you experience, is take your fingers. They're like tuning forks, your fingers. Now, point them towards the center of the book and slowly, slowly, very slowly move it towards the center of the book, because everything has an auric field.
I could feel the energy between my fingers, like kind of like pressing against like the insides of them.
Yeah. If you keep moving it towards the center of the book, you describe what you're experiencing. You know,
it's just like putting my hands, like, I don't know. I don't even know how to describe it. Like, it just seems like my hands are gliding in something. And
And the profile of that is interesting. It becomes sort of like almost like a white, sort of hot, sort of cold feeling.
Yeah, absolutely. That's incredible.
Now, what I'll do with that book is, if you put it down, I'm just going to go through 5 stages, because one of the biggest things is for you as a seeker is to become more sensitive to the subtleties. And so it's easy to do a 1-2 punch, give you a awakening, but make nothing of it. It's an awakening. And what do you do with it? I just felt something. It was crazy. We can go from resonance, and we'll go to the resonance and the vibrational part in a second here. Now I'm just going to add a little bit more to it. Now, even when I do that, you're even noticing subtleties, which I find interesting, but you probably find it even more interesting that you're experiencing that.
Mm-hmm.
You explain it. You explain it to the audience.
It's just something. It's something I haven't noticed before. Like just little things, like subtleties, like to your point of just like a little bit on the neck, like area, like just especially the hands. Just because I use them, I can still feel energy, like energetic. Like I don't even like. It's just something I've never experienced with the senses before. And I think we do this every day. We just don't pay any attention to it.
Now, pick up the book and tell me what you experienced very slowly. About your investigation and discovery is to merge. I always tell people, if you think it's slow, it's not slow enough, because you're registering and gathering this stuff as you speak. Now, pick it up and explain what you notice. Just feel it in your hands like this. Just feel it and tell me what you notice.
I don't know. It feels lighter to me now. I don't.
It's a different frequency.
It feels lighter. I don't. It's like I don't know. It's like appearing smaller almost. I don't know.
Because these things are being altered. Now, if you take your hands like this, you're already activated. Now I'm just going to start to increase the frequency. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and we're going to concentrate in that center point, so it starts to vibrate to a point where it's physically evident, and it's vibrating, and we'll vibrate a little bit more. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Now there's a frequency, and that frequency is becoming more self-evident. Now, if you move your hands and you describe what you're experiencing, and now we start to go into the center. Let's go into the center of that. Keep your eyes open. All I'm going to do is I'm going to take you to the center of 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 the center. Now, what are you experiencing?
So I definitely feel cooler, and it's like I'm a resistance almost. Like when I want to push my hands together, like I feel like there's a pushing back almost, like it's a resistance.
Now palpate it. Don't think about it. You're experiencing it. Your body is the tuning fork.
It's like a heavier energy almost. Like it's not as it's not as easy to move through. It's like a little thicker.
Right. Now, if you change the shape of the energy, like doing this, just rotate your hands like this, and you start to notice there is a presence. And now just sort of pull it back. It's like pull it back. There is a concentration taking place there. Now, if you if I get you to now just breathe, like just a short breath in through your mouth. One more. Now, what do you notice with your hands?
They're numb, almost.
What's that?
They're numb.
Yeah. Now do it again. Another, but this time I want you to suck in a little bit through the nose and then one more. Now what are you experiencing?
The same thing. It's just like a little numb. More resistance. A lot more resistance. A lot more. It's like a basketball. I'm almost holding like a basketball almost. Like
right. Because this is what we call the ground entry level of chi packing. This is how you start to accumulate and concentrate energy. And you know, apprehension, as much as your admission of the seeker, there's a little apprehension in the fear of. Got a little contractive there when I mentioned exorcisms. That's okay. This is part of the beast. It's identifying with your personality realization, but the conscious awareness is very evident. The energy doesn't go anywhere, and it's very palpable, and it can take you to levels. Well, instant healing. Quite frankly, that's where I go.
Sure.
And it doesn't take very much. It doesn't matter whether you're a skeptic, a guru, a janitor, a CEO of a Fortune 500 company. We all operate in that same space. And, you know, you are seeking and you will find. And part of that is starting with a very strong base. You know, for your own admission, there are things that you experienced today that were things that you're not familiar with. It's like, oh, okay, I've never really had this experience. And it becomes even more evident as you go on that journey. Like your lung channel instantly upgraded from our conversation today. You know, that little sweat and perspiration you're getting on your forehead is heat. It's a lot of heat, because that's just bringing the yang energy, which instantly becomes present.
Bring in the heat, San. I love this conversation. We got to do it again sometime. How can people connect with you? How can they watch your content?
You can find me on all media, The Way 126 Experience on YouTube, Consciousness of the Way podcast on all 20 platforms, and Instagram is The Way Experience. And, you know, go and check out my material. I have an app that will take you there. And basically, in 9 weeks, you'll be the master keeper creator of your reality, and you can measure it on a daily basis. It's evidence-based awareness that takes place from a second-by-second basis that you can then acquire your consciousness and develop a skill that you take away that's yours forever.
I love it. Well, thank you, brother. Thank you for chopping it up with me. Thank you for bringing the heat, bringing that energy to this conversation. And for those who are listening and watching to this, I know they're definitely going to experience something. I can't thank you enough from the bottom of my heart, man. Thank you.
Well, thank you. I'm very grateful that that you invited me on your podcast. I'm very grateful, and I'm grateful that I have created a new friendship. And I'm sure we're going to see a lot more of each other, even if it's through Tom Campbell as a medium. I don't know. What a great guy. I'm very grateful for him.